All right, everyone, I'd like to introduce Ray Hamilton. Ray is one of the co-founders of invisaWear. He's a UMass Lowell alumni from the College of Engineering, Ray? Electrical engineering, is that right?
That's right.
And we've actually mentored two teams together, I think. Solar Venture Safety System and Amara. So now he's coming here. He's helping us with boot camp this year, and it was going to be talking about fundraising today. Is there anything you'd like to add, Ray, that I left out?
No, that's great. Thank you so much for the intro, David. I appreciate it.
And I'm going to make sure you can share your screen.
Okay.
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Perfect. Let me go ahead.
And thank you again for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Of course. All right. Can you guys see my screen? Yes?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for everyone for being here today. Thank you for the intro, David. Like he's mentioned, I graduated from UMass Lowell in electrical engineering back in 2017. So I do not have a business background, much more engineering background, but I was a co-founder for invisaWear, as you guys know, which was a startup out of the Difference Maker program. We make smart jewelry and accessories that allow you to call for help during an emergency. So my education was mostly on engineering, so I had a lot to do to learn with fundraising, me and my co-founder Raja. But we did go through extensive research. We attended conferences. We went through programming, accelerators. So it was all very helpful. We went through a couple fundraising rounds that got us to date. Here we are today. We've raised about $3 million that got us to where we are. And we're actually about to enter our next fundraising round, which is very exciting. So happy to give you guys my knowledge that we've learned over the years. Just wanted to start off by saying that fundraising can look very different for all different types of businesses. Some businesses may never need to raise any sort of funding, which is great. You don't have to do that. All the power to you. That's amazing. From my experience, we had to develop a product that has hardware, which can be very expensive to get to market. So happy to give you guys what I know about fundraising for startups, which can look different if you have a service business versus a product, all different types of businesses. So just take that with a grain of salt. And so navigating the fundraising world, it can be very overwhelming. There's lots of different sources where you can get funding. One of the first things that I think is the most relevant to the stage that you guys are at right now, which honestly anyone should take advantage of, doesn't matter what stage you are at, is the pitch competitions, which all of you here today have already began that journey, which is great. Since you were in the Difference Maker pitch competition and you ended up advancing, which is awesome. So congrats to you all for getting to this stage. But just so you know, there are so many different types of pitch competitions out there, and you're not limited to just Difference Makers. You can go out and apply to anything out there. Boston has tons and tons of pitch competitions. It's a big startup community. And once you go to like one event, you'll hear about other events that people will talk about. Oh, are you going to this event too? There's a bunch of people that kind of hop around, which is amazing. Highly recommend that you do a little bit of research and find out what you can do. I think for us early on, we applied to like 19 pitch competitions, which was amazing. We ended up winning about like $15,000 in prize money, which was awesome. And oftentimes they're just grants, basically. So it's non-dilutive funding. If you can get any sort of funding that's a grant, that's always the best type of funding because you don't owe any money back to anyone and you don't have to give up any percentage of your company. So grants are awesome. There's also another type of grant funding is you can apply for government grants too. So the government has programs called SBIR, which if depending on your business and what you're trying to develop, the government has certain initiatives that they're trying to help advance. And if there's anything that can align with what you guys are trying to solve, that's amazing. The NSF, I know they have a lot of really great grant opportunities, the National Science Foundation, that they're trying to advance technology. So I highly recommend you check out any sort of SBIR grants. Those are also non-dilutive funding. And that is a whole that's a whole like wormhole in it of itself, learning SBIR funding, navigating that whole process. It's very long, it's very application heavy. It takes a lot of time. There's different stages. I believe you have to prove certain milestones. So I'm not going to go into detail about that, but that is something that you guys can explore if you want to look into it. There's also accelerators. So very similar to the Difference Maker program, it's kind of like a business accelerator program. There's tons out there that you can look into, which I'll go into on the next slide. But basically, it's trying to get you through a program where they teach you about how to grow and scale your business. So like I mentioned, I had an engineering background. I did not have any sort of business background. So it was really helpful going through accelerator programs that help train you and coach you on how to actually start a business, what you need to know, going through customer discovery process, helping find your market, how big is your market, and what are your competitive advantages versus the existing competitors out there? How do you do financing, budgeting? Do you need to apply for patents? A lot of these accelerators cover basically all those big topics that are really helpful for you to know. That for me, coming from my experience, I'm an engineer, so I didn't know about any of that stuff. It's kind of like getting a mini MBA for your business, which is awesome. So for us, it was really helpful. We went through the Difference Maker program, and then we applied for a program called the E4All accelerator, which was amazing. I'll go into that into the next slide. And then we also got into Mass Challenge, which was amazing as well. So you don't have to do just one. Like Difference Makers is great. And if you don't have to go to another one, that's totally fine. But if you want to go and do more, that's also really great. And a lot of times they give you funding too. So at the end of the programs, they'll give you like maybe a grant for $5,000. Mass Challenge is one of the big ones. They give out, I believe it's $1 million every year for free. They don't take any percentage of your company, which is amazing. Some accelerators do take equity. So just keep that in mind. Also bank loans. This is one of the more traditional types of funding available. Typically you need to be operating for a couple of years with like revenue in order for banks to consider you for a loan. But there are certain programs that you can apply for early on that can get you funding before you're kind of on the market and have revenue, which is really helpful. We did take advantage of some of these programs that are available, which we learned about through the accelerator programs that we had, which is awesome because the accelerators try to bring in all of the different resources available in this ecosystem to help you, which is great because it connects you with the right people. So we got connected with an organization called the Lowell Development Financial Corporation. They're referred to the LDFC. And basically what they are is they're a consortium of banks in the Lowell area. And it'll be like the Enterprise Bank, it could be Lowell 5, it could be Salem Bank. They all help contribute to these funds, and it allows them to take more risky loans on companies that might not be on the market yet, because it's less risk for them if there's more banks involved, which is great. One of their initiatives for the LDFC program is they like to fund businesses in Lowell and trying to create more economic development in the city of Lowell. So we were able to apply for a loan. There at the time was the incubator loan program, which we were working out of the UMass Lowell Innovation Hub. So we got to take advantage of that innovation loan. And I know it doesn't always happen like this, but typically they need a recommendation letter. So we actually were able to get one from the university. UMass Lowell helped write us a recommendation letter to get that loan. So basically, they said like, hey, this company, they went through the Difference Maker program. They've reached all these milestones. They got paired up with mentors. We have amazing alumni that are very successful, helping them grow their business. They moved on. They went through the E4All program, graduated through that. They've gotten some more funding. They've reached more milestones. And we think that this is a great business that you can help fund. And so the banks kind of partner with the university. They partner with other organizations too, to try to get more info to whether or not they're going to vote to give you the loan. So highly recommend looking into that. There are other loans out there too that you can do. But the great thing about loans in a nutshell is you don't have to give away percentage of your company, obviously. So that is great if you want to have full ownership of your company. That's one of the more traditional ways. And we did take advantage of that, which was amazing. You don't always have to just get one type of funding source. So like we took advantage of basically anything that we could get. So we did all of these different, we took advantage of all of these different types of funding sources. We got grants, we did pitch competitions, we went through accelerators, we got bank loans. And then there's also another traditional is a friends and family funding source. Me personally and my co-founder, we didn't come from any sort of wealthy families that had all this money lying around that could help us get hundreds of thousands of dollars to get the product to the market. But what we did was we basically had a bunch of family and friends that were really excited about our idea. They wanted to help us. So we would go in and raise small checks here and there from friends and family. And that is very typical. It's not traditional, but what I would caution and recommend that you do with any friends and family is don't do any sort of back of the napkin like deals where you just take the money from them. You need to have legal paperwork outlining that this is documented. You also need to caution that this is with any investment, there's a risk that they might not be able to ever see that money again. And with friends and family specifically, there's a lot of emotions that can go into that. And you just want to be cautious of any sort of money that you take from these people. You want to make sure, one, it's not their life savings, because it's going to be awkward at holiday dinner when you lost all their money, of course. So just be very cautious of that. And you don't want to tarnish any sort of relationships that you have with these people, and just make sure that they understand the risks. And once you can get past that, that's totally fine to be able to take advantage of friends and family. At the later stage, we look more towards institutional investors. And a lot of institutional investors like to see that friends and family might have invested in your business because it shows that the people closest to you that know you were willing to back your business and your idea because they believed in you. So that is one of the things that some institutional investors do look for. But obviously, if you don't have friends and family that have money lying around, that's completely fine. And if you really need to raise large pools of capital, that's really where institutional investing might be the right fit for your business. If you need to raise like millions of dollars to get a product to market, a lot of like technology or like medical device companies like that need it. If you're trying to like cure cancer with a new drug or something like that, that's very common, especially in the Boston area. There's lots of institutional investors that specialize in those types of industries. And I'll go into this more in detail in the future, but there's many different types of institutional investors. There's venture capital, there's angel investors, there's groups, private equity. There's also different ones that focus on different industries. So it's really important to find the right ones that fit your business. And like I mentioned before, all of these are different opportunities that you can take advantage of. We took advantage of all of them. But for your business, it's really important for you to know what's right for you. And some of these might not be right for your business, and that's completely fine. So for pitch competitions, like I mentioned, there's so many local competitions in the area. You already started with Difference Makers, which is great. So congrats to you all. I highly recommend E4All. That's another local one in the area. So E4All, they are headquartered in Lowell, and it is a accelerator program they do run, but they also host pitch competitions where you can go and kind of pitch your idea, and you don't have to be in the accelerator program, but that is a great gateway to getting into the accelerator program. That's something that we did. So definitely check out E4All. E4All, they do tend to focus more on businesses that are local in the Lowell Lawrence community, but they also serve, they have many different locations. They tend to focus more on underserved locations, and they tend to also focus on business owners, small business owners, and business owners that are more diverse, that might not be able to have access to capital. So a lot of the companies that they fund tend to be, I think, it's more than 70% women, and I think over 50% of them come from diverse founders, which is really great to see. That's kind of their mission. But there's other different types of competitions out there. Mass Innovation Nights, that's another organization. They host monthly events around the Boston area. And basically, it's a really exciting event. Highly recommend anyone, if you want to check it out, and just go. I believe it's free to attend, and you can go, and there's usually tons of startups that are developing some really cool idea that they're really passionate about. Usually it's innovation is their focus. So a lot of it is like technology, but it doesn't have to be. But usually there's like a competition at the end. So there's like a voting where people can vote on the idea that they think is the best. And then they'll also have judges come in and vote on industry experts, basically come in and judge the competitions, and they'll give you prize money if you win. So that's another one you can check out. Boston New Technology, that's another one that hosts events. I think it's monthly. I'm not sure. It's similar to Mass Innovation Nights. And then another one you could check out, SBA's Innovate Her. They do competitions all the time as well. There's plenty of others. And like I mentioned before, honestly, it can be hard to find some of these competitions, but once you immerse yourself in this ecosystem and you start going to these events, you'll start to hear other people say, oh, are you going to this event, or have you checked out this? And you'll start to hear more competition. That's honestly where we found out about a lot of the competitions that we applied for and ended up winning some funding from, because we just basically just jumped right into that space and just kind of ran with it. It's really exciting. It's great to meet people, meet other founders too, meet mentors, people that might be able to help you. A lot of lawyers will come in and try to help you as well if you have any sort of ideas that might be patentable, or if you need to get legal documents up and running for your business, if you haven't filed for any sort of business entity documentation that you usually need to do. Definitely recommend connecting with lawyers. Don't do anything yourself with free online agreements. I can't stress that enough. So these are some pitch competitions that I highly recommend you check out. Accelerators. So E4All is one that we did after we did the Difference Maker program. And it's a funny story about E4All. So we went through Difference Makers, and then we were just graduated, and we were at a point where we were really trying to decide if we're really going to take this to the next level, develop the product, get it to market. We were still in the prototyping phase, and we were really, really focused on the development of the product at the time. When we found out about E4All, we kind of looked at it as a distraction. So the way the accelerator works, it's a 12-week program. They meet twice a week. It's usually about 3 hours. I think it's 2 or 3 hours that you go in, and they'll have industry experts come in and they'll talk about a certain topic that day. And then usually there's homework that you have to do each week. And then they also pair you up with mentors, and you're supposed to meet with the mentors also once a week. So it did sound like very time consuming. And for us, we were working on product development. We were kind of worried like, oh, this might be a distraction for us. And we talked to a few people, professors at UMass Lowell about it, talked to Holly, and we were sort of nudged like, maybe just apply, you never know, maybe you'll get in. And we ended up applying, we got in, and I can't tell you, within the first 2 weeks, we had done and accomplished so much that I never could have even imagined us being able to do. And it's because there's so many resources available that we would not have had access to had we not entered this program. So we got paired up with 3 mentors that were amazing, that specialized in certain things that we were looking for help with. At that time, we were looking for legal help because we weren't sure if we had something patentable or not. So we were looking to connect with a lawyer. We had met with 3 different law offices. We had found a law office that had an alumni that was from UMass Lowell, that was a partner, helped us get into a program that we had no idea about, that we couldn't afford this law firm, but because we knew this guy from UMass Lowell, we were able to get all these services for free now, essentially. So that was amazing, that we never would have had access to if we didn't do that. We ended up hearing about a pitch competition. We ended up applying. We won the pitch competition, all within like 3 days of hearing about it and getting into this program. And then we went out and talked to like over 100 potential customers. We did a bunch of customer discovery. And this is something that's really, really important to do early on, is doing customer discovery, which you guys are going to do in the boot camp. But it's really important for you to understand the problem that your market is that you are trying to solve in the market. So I'll give you a funny story. For us, we were developing this great product, and I can't remember if we might have told the story already in the one of our previous discussions, but essentially we had developed a feature where it's a vibration feature, and it was supposed to discreetly alert people, the users, that oh, someone received your alert and helped us on the way. And that was something that was causing our design to be very big, but it was a cool feature. As engineers, we were like, oh, we can add this in, we think it's great. And we learned in the customer discovery phase, after talking to people, that people said, oh, if it vibrates and I'm panicked in an emergency, I'm probably not even going to hear it. I wouldn't even care about that feature. The number one thing that people cared about was the size. They said they want it to be as small as possible, or else they're never going to wear it. And that was so eye-opening to us, because we were about to go out and spend all this extra money developing something that was going to cause the product to be huge, and then people would never want to wear it, and then it would have been a total waste of money. So going through that exercise was so crucial, and we probably never would have done that. We did it through difference makers, but they also force you to do it in eFrail, and it's really important to kind of focus on these core fundamental things before you move forward with spending a lot of time and money developing something that people don't actually want. That's just one example of the many things eFrail helped us with. But we accelerated the most in those 12 weeks than I think we had ever accelerated, like throughout the entire course of our business. So highly recommend accelerators. And eFrail is just one. There's many others. So there's another big one. One of the world's largest accelerators is called Mass Challenge. So after we did eFrail, we went and applied to Mass Challenge. Mass Challenge, they have chapters from all over the world, in so many different countries. They also have a bunch throughout the United States. They had a Boston chapter, which was very convenient to us. So just traveling to Boston every day, we were able to take advantage of it. They give out, I think, $1 million every year with no equity. They don't take any equity. They just give it to you as a grant. They don't give it out to everyone, though. So it's very competitive to get into Mass Challenge. I think the statistics around it were, at the time for us, people were saying that it was more difficult to get into get your business into Mass Challenge than it would be for you to go in and apply and get into Harvard for yourself. So it was really cool. We were very excited when we found out we got in. because lots of people are congratulating us. Even just getting into a program like that is such a game changer, even if you don't win funding at the end. It has a lot of credibility. There's a lot of industry experts that go through the judging process, and they get to choose who gets to get in. And there's so much more programming that is available. It's actually like impossible for you to attend all of the programming, because there's so many different ones that run throughout the day. So for Mass Challenge, it was 4 months throughout the summer. I think it went from June to October. And Monday through Friday, all day long, they have all these industry experts come in, and they'll have topics all across the board, which is awesome because you can choose which sessions that you want to go to that are actually relevant to you, your business, and what you're trying to focus on at that point in time. So that's amazing. Mass Challenge also has like thousands of mentors from all across the world. So it gives you access to experts that might not be available to you in your area. If there's a certain industry that like might not have a bunch of experts in your area, but maybe in like another country, there's like a ton of fashion experts in it or something, or in New York, you can get connected with fashion experts, or if you need someone that specializes in nonprofits, there's so many different people that you can connect with and reach out to, that they're specifically volunteering to help people like you. So Mass Challenge is a great one. I highly recommend checking it out. And the mentorship program out of these accelerators, I have to say, is the #1 reason to apply for any accelerator. Getting people willing to volunteer to help you accelerate your business is honestly invaluable, and they're willing to help you out, and give you connections that you might never think you would have access to. So I'll give you a great story. For E4All, we were looking for a manufacturer for our product. At the time, I was hand assembling everything, all of the boards, which was not obviously feasible. So we needed to find a contract manufacturer that could assemble our technology and do it very, very small, because because doing it by hand, obviously, it's not fast enough, and it's way bigger than using high-tech equipment that could make it very, very small. So we were looking for a manufacturer. One of our mentors knew the owner of a facility in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, which is right around the corner, and he does exactly what we were looking for. So she set up a meeting with him. We got to meet him. He was incredible, and he was willing to help us out. He's now the owner of the manufacturing facility that we use. He's also a mentor to us. We meet with him every single month. He's incredible, gives us so much insight, with all of his knowledge and experience in that industry. He's also our lead investor. So that is a connection that we never would have had we not got paired up with such a great mentor that was well connected in this community. So the mentorship program is #1. It's the #1 reason to apply for any of these types of accelerators. I can't stress that enough. It's so invaluable to have people willing to help you. And usually it's for free. So definitely don't take that for granted. And like I said, at the end of these programs, there's usually prize money. So you'll go and pitch, and then there'll be judges that they'll hand out cash at the end to people that they think should be deserving of it. So that's cool. These are just some examples too. At the bottom I've provided, if anyone wants to write them down to check them out. Y Combinator is one of the most it's one of the most well-known. That one is in Silicon Valley, I believe. Techstars is another well-known one. They also have a bunch of locations. They have one in Boston, I believe, which is great. And then Founder Institute, that's another well-known one. And it's important to know that there's different types of accelerators. So like I mentioned, E4All, they focus on usually it's more smaller businesses and diverse founders and underserved communities, whereas Y Combinator, they like to focus on companies like startups that have the potential to reach like millions and millions of people. So have very high impact, not even millions of people. It could just be like a B2B business, but it's going to have tremendous impact essentially. Greentown Labs, this one's local, I believe. I think they're in Somerville, Smarter in the City, and Bolt. Bolt is a hardware focused accelerator. So if anyone is interested, you can write those down, or you can research some more that you think might be a better fit for you. So bank loans, like I mentioned before, they usually like to look for sales and revenue first, but we took advantage of the LDFC. We were able to get a $100,000 loan at a very low interest. It was 3% interest at the time, which was amazing. So they had a special incubator program. They also had a program for E4All. That was for smaller checks. I think it was like 15,000. But they like to fund businesses in Lowell. They fund lots of restaurants that open up in Lowell. Excuse me, all different types of businesses. So that's really helpful. Usually bank loans, one of the catches is they do look for a guarantee. So banks usually look for assets that you have that if something were to fail and you can't pay the loan back, then they ask for you to put collateral down. So you basically are saying like, okay, you might have to put your house down on the line or something. Or you just personally guarantee that you're going to pay the money back if something fails and the business can't pay the money back. So that is something that a lot of banks like to see. It likes to show that you have some skin in the game. If they're going to put some money in, it's a big risk for them, and they want to see that you're also willing to take the risk. So that's just something to keep in mind with bank loans. If you're really passionate and you really believe in your business, it's something to consider. It was something we were willing to do. And I'm really happy that we did it, but it might not be for everyone. So just something to keep in mind. So friends and family, like I mentioned, this is very, very important for you to have a lawyer draft an agreement to make sure that everything's being documented. Also important to sit down with each person and make sure they understand the risks. So for us, we sat down with every single family or friend that was interested in investing, and we went through our entire pitch. We made sure that they knew exactly how much money we needed to raise. So we weren't asking them we needed like $150,000 just to get started. Obviously, we weren't asking them for that specific amount. We told everyone how much money we needed to raise, and we told them that we were definitely going to be able to do it. And we were really passionate about it. We weren't going to give up, and people believed in us. They really saw that we were passionate, which was awesome. They're really excited about the idea. We also told every single person this can't be your retirement money that you're relying on, because this is a risk. And everyone understood that, which was really, really important, because like I mentioned, it's going to be really awkward if your family member calls you up and says, hey, where's my money? And they need to understand that they might not see that money ever again, or it's going to take a long time. Usually it's not like getting a liquidation event happens overnight. It can take almost 10 years a lot of times, or even longer. If you someday get acquired, or maybe if you go public, that's usually a liquidation event where they would see their money back. So that's also important that they understand that. They know that it's going to take some time in order for them to see a return on that investment. Institutional investors. So this is typically later stage. You will start to look for more institutional investors, but there are some early stage institutional investors that you can find. It really depends on your business and the type of business that you have and you're looking to grow, and what you want to do with your business as well. So one very, very common one is angel investors. So typically an angel investor, institutionally, an angel investor might be part of like a group of angel investors, and their typical check sizes range from 300,000 to $1 million. This number does change over time, so that might be a little bit more. But typically angel investors are investing their own money. So with a group, it'll be a bunch of very wealthy individuals. Are usually known as high net worth individuals. That allows them to take such big risks and invest a lot of money into these types of businesses. But there's also like a private angel. This is just any one person that might want to invest in a company, and they might have a lot of money. They can be considered an angel investor and invest their own money. So like I said, they can invest in a group or they can invest on their own. Usually if they're on their own, it's smaller check sizes, might not be 300,000, it might be 50,000, might be 25,000. So really depends. And it's really important to make sure that you find the right angel investors that are passionate about what you're doing, because with any investment, I would consider it almost like a marriage. It's like a permanent relationship that you have with this person. You can't really get divorced with them too. So that's another thing. They're not really going away. So it's really important to find the right investors that believe in you and your business, are passionate about what you're doing, and they're not going to basically wreak havoc for you and cause huge headaches. So really important to find the right people. There's also venture capitalists is another really common one. Just so you guys are aware, I think it's less than like 2% of companies ever get venture capital funding. So it really depends on your business, what you're looking for, the type of business that you're looking to grow. They usually like to invest a lot of money, and they're looking for very, very high returns. So they're looking for high impact businesses that are going to grow and scale, so that they can see a return on investment. The difference with venture capital is they typically aren't investing their own money. They go out, a lot of these VCs, they'll go out and raise a fund from other people with money, and then they'll use that fund to invest in startups, in businesses that they think are going to be huge one day. So that's the big difference between angel investors and venture capital. And that's why they usually have higher check sizes. So it's over $1 million usually. And there's many, many different types of venture capital. There's lots of different types of funding out there from venture capital, anywhere from very early stage to early stage or even later stage. And it can be really difficult to find the ones that are looking for companies that are in your industry and are at the stage that you're at and are looking to invest the check sizes that you're looking to see. So it's really important to do your research, find the right VC groups that are the right fit for you. So for us, it was a little difficult to find venture capital in the Boston community because there's not a ton of consumer venture capital in the Boston area. And usually, especially with consumer, they like to see later stage more traction from what we heard in the Boston area. So I'll tell you a funny story. So we didn't know what types of funding that we needed early on. We didn't know, we thought we didn't come from multifamily, so we were going to have to go out and raise institutional funding. And all the institutional investors told us, oh, you're way too early. We want to see more traction first, so we want to see more sales. And for us, we were like, well, how are we supposed to get sales if we don't have a product yet and we need money to develop the product? So it was like a chicken and the egg problem. So that was one of the hardest problems we had to solve, and we were able to overcome it over time. And honestly, it was a little devastating to learn that because we were so passionate about it. We were like, what are we going to do? We don't come from multifamilies. We're not sure how we're going to be able to raise this money. But we just kept going. We kept going to different events, meeting new investors, putting ourselves out there, telling everyone what we were doing, our problems that we were trying to solve. And people were so nice to be able to connect us with someone that they thought we would be able to help us. We ended up starting out just a friends and family round, and then we also met people through our networks, through the accelerator programs. So that was exciting to get investors that weren't people that we knew finally on board. And then we also met with a bunch of alumni from UMass Lowell. UMass Lowell has the Riverhawk Venture Fund, which is basically a bunch of really successful alumni that have grown their businesses and to be huge success. And then they'll go and vote on companies to invest in this fund. And so we were able to meet with a bunch of those angel investors that were really passionate about what we were doing, and they ended up investing in us. So that was really exciting to be able to meet them. So we overcame that over time. And now we're looking to raise our next round of funding, venture capital, after we've gotten to traction. So it's kind of coming full circle. It's really funny. You never know what's going to happen. But every business is different, like I said before. So don't think that if you don't need to raise venture money, that you're not going to be successful, because that's completely not true. The next part I want to say is the funding stages. So like I mentioned, there's many different types of stages for funding. So usually the first stage, if you're going out to raise money, is usually referred to as the pre-seed round. This can be up to $1 million usually. And usually this is where you're at the idea stage, which is where you guys are right now. And basically you have an idea. Maybe you want to, maybe you need to develop something and you need some funding in order to develop it, but you don't have any sort of traction. So usually the pre-seed, this is where you see friends and family to start. And usually in a pre-seed round, it's usually the method of the investment is done by either a convertible note or a safe. So this is something I had never heard of before, which we learned through the accelerator programs that we went through and our mentors. So convertible note, it's more traditional. It acts as a loan. So you get the investment, and then it's basically a loan over a period of time that will then convert into equity at your next round of funding. And the reason we do this is because when you're early on, it's really hard to set a valuation on a company because you don't know what it's worth yet. You don't have a lot of assets. And so you don't want to set a valuation, because you can say, oh, well, I think my company's worth $1 million, and someone could say they think it's worth $50,000, and that has a huge impact on what percentage the investors get in your company. So the purpose of the convertible note is to say, let's just table that discussion for the next round of funding once you actually get to that phase, if you do get there, and then it will convert to that at a later stage. If it never ends up happening, if you never raise more money, then the note just gets paid back as a loan. And then there's terms, there's an interest rate on it, and there's also a discount. So for investors that invest in you early on, they're taking much higher risk than someone at a later stage, because it's so early, there's so many more risks, and there's so much more there's so many more reasons you could fail. So to incentivize people, there's a discount, usually because they took that risk. Their money is going to convert at a discounted rate, so they're going to get more shares than later stage investors would if they had put in that same amount of money. Another more common tool that's becoming popular, it's similar to convertible note, it's called a safe. At the time when we were at the pre-seed round, it was kind of new, so not a lot of people knew about it. So we ended up not using a safe, but I'm seeing it's a lot more popular now. And it's basically the same thing as a convertible note. I want to say, I'm not sure exactly, but from what I hear, I believe a safe, the big difference with that and the convertible note is I don't think it acts as a loan if you never raise more money, I think. So you don't have to pay that back, I believe. Sometimes that could be problematic if you're not at the next fundraising round, and now you have to pay back this loan. So I think that's why more people are using safes now. So those are probably the most relevant to anyone that's looking to raise money right now. very quick, I'll just try to go over the next later stage rounds. Is the seed round. Usually this is equity, and this is more of the proof of concept phase. So maybe you've gotten some funding, you developed something, and they usually call it the MVP. It's the minimum viable product that is able to get you to the market and actually get some sales. Usually seed rounds are consisted of more institutional investors, angel investors, or early stage VCs. The next round, this is the round that we are at right now. It's actually Series A, and the check sizes for this have changed drastically over the past several years. I think when I was at the pre-seed, most people Series A, like a $6 million Series A was considered very high, I think, years ago, and now it's changing and it's looking like $10 million is an average Series A round. So it's very interesting to watch that change over time. You might even see some the market adjusts now. Things are changing every day with the economic climate. So just so you know, these numbers, check sizes, they do change over time, and they do change quickly. But this is usually the stage where you're looking to scale. So you've gotten a product, you developed it, you got into market, you got a bunch of traction, and now you're looking to scale. So you need more money for to scale your operations, scale your team, and scale your marketing. And usually this is more VCs usually, but it can be some angels too. Sometimes there'll be a follow-up investment from your existing investor. We'll go into that round, and then you'll get more VCs, newer investors. And then it goes down the line, Series B, Series C plus. It can go anywhere. I've heard up to like Series L, Q, not Q. I've heard up to like Series F, I think. Some people just never stop raising money. It's pretty wild. But those are way more like expansion, later stage, rapid growth stages, giant companies. Usually it's venture capital at that stage. Can also be private equity, which is very different, or corporate investors. A lot of corporations might have an investment branch where they invest in companies that they think they want to partner with. And that's just significant capital, can be up to hundreds of millions of dollars the later stage. So they were usually looking to expand into new markets or go global. And you really need a lot of money to scale your team and operations and focus more on product development and increase your market share for that. So these are some of the strategies that you should just keep in mind if you are looking to fundraise. So only raise money if you need to. Honestly, you don't have to raise money. I would recommend not raising money. The best thing you can do, if you can own your own company entirely, that is all the power to you. That's amazing. A lot of service businesses are like this, which is great. They can go out, they have a service that they provide. They don't need to invest in a bunch of product development, and they can start to get clients. So that's great if you can do that. Or if you have your own money, you can bootstrap. That's usually what it's referred to. And you can use your own money, and that can help you get hold on to more of your company as you continue to add more value to it before you have to go and raise money at a later stage. So don't raise money if you don't need to. Take advantage of grants if you can, or competitions. And if you are looking to raise money, raise more money than you think you're going to need, because you are going to be like I mentioned, for us, we thought we needed $150,000, and we ended up raising $500,000 in our pre-seed round, which was really needed because there's a lot of unexpected expenses that can come up. And the last thing that you want to do is be in a situation where you don't have enough capital that's going to continue to help you succeed. The number one cause of businesses not of failing is usually cash flow issues. So you don't want to be in a situation where you don't have enough money and you have unexpected expenses coming up. So raise money, more money than you think you'll need. And usually when you get started, the number one thing you're going to need is a pitch deck. It's usually, and you guys have already kind of been through this with difference makers, you have come up with slides, and it's talking about your company, your problem, your solution, but it goes way more in depth. Usually it's like 15, 20 slides, talks about the market opportunity, talks about competition, talks about if you have any intellectual property, talks about all the finances, what's your gross margin, what are your costs, and what's your business model, and all these different things. I highly recommend you guys check out. There's a nonprofit called the Capital Network. They are a nonprofit that hosts events in Boston, and they'll have investors come in and do sessions where they help you figure out what needs to go in your pitch deck. And they can help you connect with investors on an informal basis, so you can ask them questions, which is really helpful. We took advantage of that. So I definitely recommend them, checking them out. It's called the Capital Network. And I also recommend doing a business plan. Most investors will never ask to see your business plan, or sometimes they will ask to see it, but they're never going to read it because it's like a 40-page document that they're never going to read because they don't want to spend the time doing it. But usually they want to see that you went through the exercise of creating a business plan. And it's really the most helpful for you going through that exercise and making sure you understand every single thing about your business and everything that you're going to need to know, making sure that you've thought through it and you have a plan. You come up with your timeline, your milestones, how much funding that you're going to need if you're going to need it, who your customers are, who your market is, what problem you're really trying to solve, all of those things. What are your finances? All of that. It's basically the pitch deck, but it's in a way more detailed format. So definitely go through a business plan. And usually, like I said, minimum viable product, that is your main goal right now at this stage. You don't need to have something that's totally perfect, that is very advanced, that maybe you're gonna like, those are features that you're thinking about that are nice to have. Those should be down the line that you're going to add in the future. Your main goal is to have a product that's viable, that you can use to get to market and start to get traction. And then you can continue to build off of that from there once you get to that phase. Usually what investors look for when you're raising money is they look for three big things. They look at the product that you're developing. They also look at the market opportunity. So what market or industry are you serving? And they usually like to see whether or not it's the right fit for that product market fit. They also look for the team. The team is the number one most important thing that they do look for, especially at this stage when you don't have a lot of assets. Maybe they think you have a great idea, but if they think you do not have the right team, if they can sense that your team is like maybe not all on the same page, or maybe they're arguing about something during your pitch, then they're going to sense that, and they know that if you can't like get on the same page, even in like a 30-minute PowerPoint discussion, then you're going to have a lot more problems down the road running a business together, because team is the most important thing that's going to help you be successful. A lot of times they use the analogy of like, maybe you don't have the right product, you have the right market, but you also have the right team. The team is what's going to change the wrong product to the right product, and it's going to help make you successful, versus in having the right product and the right market, but the wrong team. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, a lot of things that can fail. And if the right team isn't what is there, then they know that that's the reason it's not going to be successful usually. So that team is the number one important. It's really important to find the right people that you have. And it's important, like I made the analogy before with the investors, it's the same thing with the team. It's basically a marriage. And you don't want to be stuck with someone that isn't the right person for the team, because it can cause a lot of problems for you, especially if you're looking to raise money and then you have one founder that is trying to derail the whole process, or they're not involved and they own a portion of the company, and that can cause a lot of problems, and investors know that. So just keep that in mind. And I went through this before, but finding the right investors, a lot of investors have a certain focus. So they might focus on financial technology. Some investors focus on consumer. Some investors focus strictly on AI companies. Other investors focus specifically on medical device companies. So it's really important to find the right investors that are interested in what you're doing and that in this type of industry. So those are some things to keep in mind with funding strategies. I know I just talked to you for almost an hour, about an hour, so I know it was a lot to take in, but feel free to open it up for any questions that you guys have. I'm happy to answer anything, and I'm here to help. You can consider me like a mentor if you'd like. So
Thank you so much, Ray. It was really great. If any questions? Oh, come on, there's got to be some questions out there. There was a lot of good information.
More of a comment. That was really well done. Thank you. That was super informative, and I feel like I learned so much.
oh,
from
good.
watching
I'm
that.
so glad. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad it was helpful.
Looks like there's something in the comments.
Do you see the comment, Ray?
Yes,
Yeah, so
I have
it's-
multiple screens.
Yeah,
right?
just like in terms of
Nonprofit
nonprofit, how
would
that
work differently
works out.
for funding. Yes, so there's many different funding available for nonprofits. I know nonprofits usually like to apply for grants. There's lots of grants out there that you can apply for in the private sector and the public sector. A lot of government grants that nonprofits like to look for. I know a lot of investors usually like to get a return on investment. So a lot of investors do like to focus on profit companies. I am not sure exact. I believe there are some investments that are for nonprofits though.
So Ray, one of the things I would add is when you do a nonprofit, you have, if you want to think, you have two separate customers, if you will. You have the people that you're trying to serve, and then people who want to donate money to you
Yeah.
as two different customers. And I think the grant money would
Sort of
probably be a good
donation.
way to go. And you're not necessarily worried about the people. Typically what you're going to offer the people who want to donate money is you're going to offer them like it's something they care about, that they want to do good with it. It's not that like Ray's company, invisaWear does really good stuff, but it's a profit, which you can also do. You can also have it's almost like a social entrepreneurship concept almost.
Social impact usually, yeah.
Social impact. Thank you. And so I would say that's where funding would be different. You kind of cater, and I always suggest that you might even have two different business model canvases, for one for the people you're serving and one for the people that are donating, and sort of how you're going to treat them differently.
Exactly, yeah. And I think I misspoke. So usually nonprofits, it's a donation, and usually you need to be like a 501(c) status, and then the donations are usually tax deductible. So if you're looking to raise money through donations, that's usually the way to go for nonprofits.
So I'd like to ask on a personal note for invisaWear specifically, you said it's very capital intensive to design electronics. But if it's a small PCB, maybe I think I have probably no perspective, but shouldn't a small PCB be kind of cheap to manufacture? What was the main expense in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for us, we had developed the prototypes ourselves. So my background is in hardware, Raj's background is in hardware and software. So we did develop everything ourselves early on, the prototypes. So it was inexpensive in some ways, but a lot of times it can be very expensive if you need to go to a manufacturer. A lot of manufacturers have minimum order quantities. A lot of times there's tooling involved. You need to invest in the tooling in order for them to be able to manufacture it. And a lot of times you're looking at a couple $1,000s because it does add up, and usually they're looking for a minimum. It depends on the manufacturer, but sometimes they look for minimum quantity. And it can be very expensive to make 10 of something. And it can be also the same price to make like 50 of something. So the unit cost on prototyping is very unique compared to large scale production, where it's not that expensive to make, but you're doing it in a large batch. So it's more cost effective that way. So smaller batch manufacturing is usually more expensive on the unit cost. and there's a lot of tooling things that you wouldn't really know until you get the quotes for it. So
And Ray, if I may, like, for example, if you were to make something in plastic, like
mhm.
one of the initial costs of is just making the mold, and that could cost you a whole bunch of money. But once that mold is made, then your individual.
Exactly. So for us early on, we did everything 3D printing, which is great because it's low cost, but you can't usually 3D print a product that's going to be used in large scale production. So we needed to invest in injection molding to make the plastics at a low cost that was scalable, and we could do it fast in a large quantity of them. Injection mold usually costs tens of thousands, over $10,000 usually for something like that. And it can be a nightmare to deal with. That was one of the biggest headaches that we had before we launched our product was injection molding. We went through a mold and then iterations of it to try to perfect it. It's really important to find the right injection mold supplier that can do it right the first time. I can go into that in another time, but a lot of headaches with injection molding, very stressful process, very expensive. That's for the plastics. But also you have the hardware. Also on the hardware, you have to develop the firmware. So was a recent graduate. I didn't have a ton of experience, but I had a little bit of experience developing something like this. So that's what I did. I developed the hardware and the firmware design for the prototypes. But for an actual product that's going to be used in thousands of people that are going to be relying on this for their safety, we really needed to make sure that it was an absolute bulletproof design that's going to work every single time someone tries to use it because their life could be on the line in an emergency. So what we did was we used the proof of concept that we developed ourselves to go out and raise our pre-seed round. And then we used the money from the pre-seed round to go out and we hired development agencies to help us basically accelerate this project, because I probably could have completed the design to make sure that it was perfect and it will work every time. But that is going to take a lot more time for me to do because I'm one person, versus I can go out and hire an engineering firm that has like a team of engineers that are been working for 10 years on product, all different types of products. They've developed them before. And they're going to get this project done in maybe 2 months, whereas that could have taken me 6 to 12 months. So for us, time to market was the number one most important thing at the time, because it was becoming a very competitive space. There was a lot of new products popping up, people trying to do similar things. And our biggest fear was that someone's going to come and develop this before us, get to market first, and then capture all the market share. And all of our hard work was going to be not worth it, but it was just going to be way more difficult for us to actually launch a product, get to market, if someone had kind of already been there and done that. So that's why we did that approach, because we had to get to market as soon as possible. And it's a lot better that way too, because you can hold these companies accountable. You have certain deliverables, you have a cost, they give you a quote usually for a project, you have requirements, and then they have to meet those requirements, and then you have a set price. So if they didn't meet those requirements, then you're not going to pay them for that, essentially. So that's another great thing about doing it that way. And usually these projects are not cheap. Engineers can be very expensive, especially hardware, firmware. A lot of them charge about $150 an hour. And usually you can't really outsource something like hardware. It's something that you want done really well, and they specialize it more locally within the US. So that can be difficult. And then the app, we also had the app. So we had to develop an Android and an iOS app to make sure we could have iPhone and Android users. At the time, we only had an Android app that was a prototype. We didn't have an iOS app prototype yet. And we didn't have any sort of expertise in that. So rather than going out and hiring a software engineer specializes in iOS that has to have a salary of like $100,000, we can go out and hire an agency that has a team of developers So we have like 14 software engineers on this team that helped us develop the app within 4 months, versus that could have taken us maybe 2 years to develop. So that's kind of just high level, some of the expenses that can really add up. So that's why we had to go out and raise that money. And hardware is usually more expensive because you have like a physical product, you have to source it, inventory, there's lots of tooling involved, especially if there's injection molding. So it can be a very expensive process.
So then the question that comes out of that, what gave you the confidence to go around to your family and say, look, I need $100,000? Like, Jesus Christ, that's a big bullet to take. What gave you the confidence? When did you get a piece of data that you were like, yeah, this is worth it, I should definitely be doing this, and I should sink everything I have into it?
That's a great question. So for us, I actually wasn't really going and asking people for money. They were coming to us saying, oh, like, this is amazing, I want to invest, like, can I invest? And it's so funny because like I never really thought about that, because I was like, we need $150,000, like we're not going to ask our families for that. But we had just graduated. I had family graduation party. Everyone's like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm working on this new venture. And my mom was like, why don't you just like tell everyone all at once so they can hear it? So I gave like a little quick presentation, and then people started coming up to me like, okay, I want to invest, like tell me how I can invest. So it was kind of funny, like I didn't really go out and ask them for money. It was more like they came to us saying that they wanted to invest. So
Yeah,
that's
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Fritz, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I mean I was gonna ask him as well. Thank you for the presentation. That really awesome, a lot of information. Um so in all this funding organization, I was gonna ask which institution like help your company the most?
Funding institution help us the most. It all depends, because we've gone through a couple rounds of fundraising. So at each round there was different needs that we had that need to be met. I would say pre-seed, like that very early stage when we were just at the idea phase. I want to say that the Riverhawk Venture Fund was one of the most helpful things for us. So at the time, we didn't know a bunch of high net worth individuals like angel investors. You see Shark Tank, you're like, oh great, there's these people with lots of money, but like who knows all these people with lots of money? It's really hard to find them. So when we heard about the Riverhawk Venture Fund, we were like, oh, this is great. Like, these are a bunch of the successful UMass Lowell alumni that have multi-million-dollar businesses. This is exactly what we're looking for. So we ended up getting to pitch to the Riverhawk Venture Fund. And it was so funny because I think there was like almost 50 people on the board that get to vote whether or not to invest. And it's usually just fun, but what happened for us was there was a bunch of them that were like, this is amazing. This is like the next greatest invention. I have daughters and granddaughters that I worry about their safety for. I'm very passionate about this. So they ended up reaching out to us and wanting to invest their own personal money and not just from the fund. So that was one of the most helpful things that we had happen, because all of a sudden this one investment turned into like a bunch of different investments also together, which was exactly what we needed, because we were able to raise more money than our original $150,000 goal, which honestly was huge because we needed more money. There's a lot of unexpected expenses that can come up. One of them was like a patent. We ended up filing a patent application. So there's a certain amount that we were allowed to use that I mentioned we got the free legal services for, but then there's a certain limit on how much we can use, and lawyers can get very expensive. Also, you definitely want to make sure that you form your business the right way. So if you're just starting out, maybe you don't have a business entity yet, I do not recommend just going on like LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer online and just be like, oh, here's an operating agreement. Like, let's all just sign this. Like, no, absolutely not. Go talk to an actual lawyer. It's going to be the most beneficial thing for you, and you want to make sure you do it right the first time, because it can get very messy, can get very expensive, very stressful trying to clean things like that up later on. So that's just one example. But like I mentioned, like injection molding was such a nightmare for us. It was super expensive. And we had to do a bunch of fixes for that. And then marketing. That was one thing that I was blown away, like how expensive marketing can be. Like our whole goal was like develop this product, get to market, great. Everything's gonna be great. No, like that's when like things get really, really hard. Like you need to figure out how to market, and you need to figure out how to market well and at a low cost. And it's really difficult to balance that and get a low customer to acquisition costs, because marketing can be so expensive. And like even to date, that's something that we struggle with. Like we spend a lot of money in marketing, and people come to us and they're like, this is amazing, why have I never heard of it? And it's like so frustrating, because we feel like we've gotten all this traction, but if you walk down the street and ask 10 people, have you heard of invisaWear? Probably 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 have never heard of it before. So marketing is very, very expensive, and that was one of the things that we had a budget for, but we definitely needed more money than we thought we had.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, good help. Yeah. But do you guys sell only in the US, or you guys sell out of state as well?
Great question. We operate in the US, but the product does work in over 200 countries worldwide. So we ship internationally. We did partner with a company in Canada recently, about a year ago, that helped us distribute all of our products in Canada. So they're a billion-dollar company. It's basically like Verizon in Canada. So they're called TELUS. But most people in the US have never heard of them, but everyone in Canada has heard of them. They own a telecom division, but they also own a security division. They bought ADT in Canada, and ADT is one of our partners. And so they have a huge security division. They have 600 retail stores. They have thousands of sales agents. So they can help us scale all across Canada. So they do all of our distribution in Canada. They also do our 911 in Canada.
Okay, awesome.
So
Thank you
those
very
are
much.
big markets. We have the US and Canada are two biggest, but we ship globally, but we just don't spend a lot of money marketing globally just yet. But someday we'll probably grow and invest.
Yeah.
It's,
Awesome. Thank you very much, brother.
yeah.
So Ray, if I may, do you still have more time to answer questions? Because I know we're exceeding our time a bit.
Yeah, I think so. Let me just double check. Yeah, I'm good.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Okay, I'll ask a question. First of all, thank you for the presentation, and I didn't know that we had so much local startups to gain knowledge from and funding. So thanks.
Yeah.
My question is about timing. So a lot of us are in different stages of our, let's say, academic careers, because not all of us are about to graduate or just graduating for that 2017 moment you had shared earlier.
Yep.
At what point would it be, or what pace, first of all, what pace should we, kind of work at? And two, at what point would it be reasonable to start trying to get funding if we need to take that direction?
That is a great question, and I think it looks different for everyone, and it really depends on your own personal goals and what you want to do. So it can look differently for each person, depending on like if you want to get to market as soon as possible, and this is going to be your main focus and your main goal, and you want to start to like actually get income from this, then I would say start right now. But if you're looking to kind of finish up your degree, first, and then focus all of your time on this later on, then you can also wait. Or you can do what I did, where I was actually working on this like my senior year, and I basically just didn't sleep. I would just have school all day, and then I would work on it all night. And we would constantly be looking to fundraise, and it's going to take you a lot of time. Just so you know, I don't think I went into the timeline of fundraising, but typically it takes about 6 months to fundraise. Usually people kind of underestimate how much time it's going to take. Especially if you think you're going to need the money like in 2 months. You should have started like over 8 months ago for the fundraising, really. So that's also something to keep in mind, because it does take time. Like I said, friends and family, we met with a bunch of them. We sat down with every single person. We met with them for like over 2 hours. We went through our whole deck. We went through our business plan with each person, and that can be very time consuming. I think we had like almost 30 investors in our pre-seed round of small checks, which was amazing that we were able to do that, but it does take time. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, thank you.
But it really depends on your personal goals. If you want to sleep and you don't, you want to wait to focus on your venture, that's completely fine as well. It's really all up to you.
Well, the only other thing I would add to that is if you have something where the time is right and you don't want to necessarily miss the time.
Yeah.
So, for example, there's a company called Green Fertilizer, which is a difference maker team, and they're basically they're using plasma technology to extract nitrogen from the air. And right now in the world, there's fertilizer shortages. So I think to kind of take that timing and to not take advantage of it. I mean, fortunately, they're able to do it in parallel with their schoolwork, but you don't want to miss a timing opportunity. Or if you know that there's another company you have an immediate competition that might take the market if you're not involved. So you probably want to take those things into consideration. Ray, is that a fair?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think that's completely true. Like I mentioned, for us, time to market was the number one important thing for us because of the competition. There was so many different companies that are no longer actually in the business anymore. And I think a lot of it has to do with because we were so focused on getting to market as soon as possible and getting as much market share as possible. So that was our main focus. But yeah, shortages, just global economic conditions can obviously play an effect. But what I am hearing right now is that the economic climate is very interesting right now, but there is a ton of funds out there that are looking to invest, especially in very early stage and early stage companies. I'm hearing a lot more struggle about fundraising for later stage companies. So people are in like the Series B and beyond rounds. That is a lot more harder to come by on fundraising, but there's tons and tons of money out there that, especially in like the Silicon Valley area, there's big hubs around the world for fundraising. Silicon Valley is like one of the biggest. LA is another big one. New York is a big one. Boston's a little bit smaller, but there's still lots of capital in it. But just because you're located in the Boston area doesn't mean you can't fundraise from those other areas as well. But what I'm hearing is now is still a great time to fundraise in the very early stage where you guys are at right now.
So do we have additional questions? So I actually have one, and I think this is a good question just for people to be aware of. What was one of the most challenging term sheets that you might have saw? Or did you have any? Because that's always an important thing at each, especially with venture capital. I believe term sheets are the big piece.
Yeah, that's a great question. I recall our seed round, there was an investment that we had got, and there was many negotiations on the terms for that lead investor that we got. Usually the terms of the round are set by the lead investor. So when you have a fundraising round, you can't give one investor certain terms and another investor different terms, because I believe it's illegal. You can't legally do that. You can't give special treatment to someone when you're all value and you're at a certain stage and you're doing a round of funding. The company is valued at that value that you're at right now. So you can't give special treatment. A lot of the negotiations usually happen with the lead investor, and they know that they do have a lot of power, obviously. So they'll try to negotiate on the valuation. That was something we weren't willing to budge on. And so they had to make some compromises on some other terms that they were looking for. One term was they wanted to have a board seat, which we refused as well. So we had negotiated, instead of having a board seat, we gave them board observer rights. So that basically just gives them access to have any sort of documentation about the board's decisions. And basically the board is me and my co-founder Raja right now, which is great. It gives us the flexibility to run and operate our company. We don't need to have a vote every single time we want to do something big, or have to worry about an investor that we have a new relationship with going in and derailing any sort of decisions that we want to make. So that's something that we went through. Probably was a little bit difficult, but we held our ground and it was definitely worth it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Of course.
Any additional questions? So just real quick, I don't know if I didn't mention this when I asked the question. A term sheet is basically all the gives and takes and the equity stake and things like that you're going to be agreeing to at that point of your business, at that point of funding, that round of funding.
That's a great point. I didn't talk about that. So usually getting the actual checks, usually what it looks like when you find the investor is you go in and you do your pitch. And then usually at that stage, they might ask you to come back for a second pitch, or they might decide very quickly, like, yes, we want to move forward. And then when they make that decision, usually they'll give you a term sheet and the terms of the investment. And it's usually like one page, and it has like the big main terms about like either valuation, or if you're doing a note, it can be like the discount, it can be the interest rate on the loan, it can be the maturity date of that, things like that. Kind of the big picture stuff. And then usually you can negotiate the term sheet. And usually you want to negotiate the term sheet because later in the game, what happens is you go through the diligence phase. So once you agree on a term sheet, they start doing their due diligence on you. So they're going to start asking you for all this documentation. Do you have this? Do you have that? What are your legal docs? Do you have insurance? Let me see your projections. Let me see your business plan. Let me see your cash flow statements, financial modeling, all this stuff. What patents do you have? We want to see those patents. What legal documents do you have? We want to see your company bylaws. Who are the founders? What are the ownership stakes that each founder has? All of these things that they're going to see. They're going to try to pick apart your business, and they're going to try to see all the risks that they have. And things can fall apart if you don't have everything. But usually you want to already have negotiated the big terms, because you're not going to be able to go later on and say, oh no, well, the valuation's X. And it's like, well, no, we already agreed on that in the term sheet. So, and then usually that's when they get the check. So that process of diligence can take some time. It takes several weeks usually. So that's why I was saying it can take like 6 months to fundraise. That's more for institutional investors, like family and friends investments. Usually it's not like that. It's usually much cleaner and faster.
Excellent.
Mhm.
All right. If there's no additional questions, I think let's all thank Ray for his time, and many of you have. But thank you so much, Ray, for your time today. This is really oh, do we have a question? Oh. Sorry, I thought I heard someone. So anyway, thank you so much, Ray, for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure talking with everyone, and feel free to shoot me a message if you guys do have any additional questions that might pop up later on. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. And I'm going to stick around for a bit if anyone has questions of Difference Maker. Thanks again, Ray. Have a wonderful afternoon, and say hello to Raja, and talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.